Donkey Kong Bananza has been revealed, and depending on which parts of the franchise's 40-plus year history you particularly value, you're experiencing any feeling from pure joy to endless disappointment.
Look, if you're in that disappointed camp, I hear you.
My twin brother Matthew, who runs the channel with me, couldn't help but notice the wild redesign of DK in this game, along with a bunch of missing elements. Where are the Kongs? Where are the Kremlings? While the other Kongs are probably shoo-ins, given the recent merchandise push for Donkey Kong, the Kremlings are a big question mark. They have been scrubbed from the existence of most DK games since Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. Retro swapped the Crocs for Tikis and Returns, and invented yet another group of foes for Tropical Freeze. They even stopped appearing in Mario Sports. Mario Sports! Even before all that, they went in a totally different direction with Jungle Beat, which is the same team that's making this game.
I think it's way too early to sweat over the return of the Crocs, though.
Nintendo tried a bunch of alternate enemy types for most of the recent games, but just when we thought they were gone forever, the king returned. To think that K. Rool would be added to Smash and get his own high-budget CGI smackdown. Getting literally any Donkey Kong content in a Smash game was not on my bingo card for Ultimate, but there he was. The character's triumphant return was reportedly saved for Smash, as Retro had thought about making him a secret boss in the Switch port of Tropical Freeze. After a decade of campaigning, Nintendo finally understood that the Kremlings were a central part to the DK brand.
But that didn't mean that they were going to squeeze them back into the theme park or let them back into Mario Sports.
Similar to Jungle Beat before it, this is a clear departure from what we have known Donkey Kong to be. I speculated in my video about the future of the franchise that if Tokyo EPD got their hands on the IP, they would likely use the opportunity to carve their own path and flex their creative muscles. Donkey Kong only had one 3D adventure 25 years ago, so there was a lot of space to explore what a Donkey Kong game could be in 3D. Along with that, they've created characters and locales to not only world build, but more importantly, to mix well with the gameplay. What we see in the trailer and the treehouse footage is DK fighting large, rocky creatures. This falls in line with the destruction mechanics of the game. Enemy design in internal Nintendo games often are more of a gameplay function than storytelling or a world-building one. They're tools to craft player experience. Now with that being said, they do try and blend the two in harmony. The thrill of taking big enemies down will supersede the need for returning baddies in the eyes of the game designers, so while we might be cooked, at the same time, is that a naughty?
Guys, I think King K. Rool's back.
X, Twitter, Blue Sky, forums, and YouTube have been a wild place over the last few days. It all started with this. The Japanese version of the Nintendo Today app had Cranky in a trailer, confirming at least one rare era character for the game.
Now, before we jump into this, we have to explain that we've been here before.
Presenting this sad image. When Tropical Freeze was on the way, we hadn't seen much of Lord Frederick, so some of the speculation was that secretly, Lord Frederick was actually K. Rool. We all know how that turned out.
I bring this up to say that we're gonna have fun speculating, but I'm just a random guy making Donkey Kong videos. Let's all take this with a grain of salt and keep an open mind.
You're not allowed to sue me if I'm wrong.
Speaking of the Cranky reveal, a bunch of people who went to the Nintendo events to demo the game found him, and we got to see his whole conversation with DK. He says something odd. Quote, "When I heard there was a banana bandit on the loose, I knew who to blame. I just had to suss out where he ran to hide." Now, we don't know exactly how the story unfolds, but it would seem that Cranky is referring to a common enemy, someone who has stolen bananas a bunch of times before. With DK's constant shuffling of enemies after the rare era, K. Rool is really the only enemy that makes sense here. He also references a rival in overalls, which means Nintendo is rolling with the rare framing of Cranky being the version of DK that captured Pauline. While this might not seem like a big deal, it's reassuring that Nintendo is integrating the DKC universe into this revitalization of the character and brand. While they are definitely charting their own course, they're referencing and honoring the characters and worlds that a lot of us grew up with. The other funny similarity here is that the title of the Smash Ultimate K. Rool reveal is simply called The Rivals. This was pointed out by Professor Chops, a user on Famiboards, who was also in the know about Donkey Kong Freedom, the cancelled Vicarious Visions DK game.
While I imagine any big details of this game are very under wraps at Nintendo, I'll add that the timing of EPD taking over development and King K. Rool's Smash inclusion, it's curious timing. While the trailer debuted in 2018, pre-production for this game must have been underway with Odyssey shipped.
While they were planning for the enemies inhabiting this world, they must have been giving brand guidance on the upcoming Donkey Kong content for Smash around the same time. If you pair that with the information of saving K. Rool's grand entry for Smash rather than Tropical Freeze's port, we have some very interesting timing and wording here. We also need to talk about the enemy type known as the Crocoids. While they could be totally new creations, the similarities and symbols are very interesting. Look at this towering one. It is the same pattern as 25M's girders, which is actually the same pattern found on K. Rool's cape. Once some of these creatures are cracked open, there's a golden skeleton. Golden skeleton. What a funny choice of color! When we look closer at these guys, they have very similar proportions to the Kremlings, as many people have noticed. Check this out too. This is a Buzzoid, and the Donkey Kong subreddit was pointing out how similar they look to Zingers. Now this could be pure coincidence, but it would follow the pattern of Donkey Kong fighting corrupted creatures and terrains. It would make sense to encounter altered versions of past creatures. It would explain why Naughty was fossilized. Here's the most wild theory I've seen. This is also stemming from the tutorial pig on Fami boards. They pointed out how the color accents on the logo look really similar to the color scheme on this beam of light coming out of the Lost World in DKC2. You can also see these colors in the barrels and mine carts in the underground world. Now this sounds absolutely insane at first glance, but when I think about it, these two scenes look pretty familiar. This would be a crazy deep cut, but given the other bits of evidence we've seen, it's definitely not out of the question. The little bits of footage we've seen detail a lot of lore and world building that Nintendo generally doesn't care about. The game opens with text saying it's happening far away from DK Isle, which is a lot more context than we usually get from Nintendo games.
Now some of you out there might be asking, what if this is all cope, and the last boss of the game is just the small monkey with the strangely long fingernails?
Well, first off, let's look at the lineup of Donkey Kong bosses. He's always going toe-to-toe with impressively large foes. The monkey could have some sort of mech or something, but I think that even if he does, that establishes another pattern that we've seen before. I'm sure I'm not the only one who notices the resemblances of the Brutals in Voidco. They fill similar character archetypes, and if you haven't noticed from the footage, this game learns a lot from Mario Odyssey. The Brutals were a great way to introduce players to totally new enemies while keeping the expected Bowser encounter tense at the end. And who knows? Maybe there's going to be some kind of epic team-up with the Creme Supreme at the end of the game.
I can tell you this though, if K. Rool is in the game, the moment is going to get its own chance to shine.
Nintendo hasn't played their hand yet. When they announce a game, they might tease a lot of elements, but they want to save the surprises for down the road. While you might think that a Smash Bros. Announcement with a bunch of new characters would generate the most buzz, the slow rollout of different elements and characters coming to the game over the course of the marketing cycle shows that this is an incredible way to build hype around a release.
Every new reveal is a chance for the game to re-enter the public conversation.
While we were given little teases of Rare Era Easter eggs, they didn't want to show too much in the trailer, especially with so much of the Direct's focus on hardware. Cranky rolled out shortly thereafter on the app, but a bunch of other mainstays are still missing in action. That being said, Cranky even mentions Rambi, and the icon in the text matches up more with his Rare design than his retro one.
Here's the bottom line. We're supposed to be forming these Kremling conspiracy theories about the game and sharing them online.
This keeps the game in the public consciousness. It gets us hungry for more advertisements about the game. And most of all, those sweet free impressions. Why burn through loads of ad spend when you can create your own buzz for your product? Every little bit of information, like the recent leak that happened on Nintendo of Korea's website, spawns another news cycle for the game.
I mean, we can even look at the months leading up to Bananza's announcement and see Nintendo a little more excited than usual to talk about the Kremling King.
This was pointed out and compiled by Professor Chops on Fami boards, and having it all laid out like this really paints a different picture. I remember when mentioning the Kremlings was like saying Voldemort at Nintendo. On a company-run Nintendo Power podcast, we had this incredibly awkward moment where one of the hosts mentioned them, and it totally killed the momentum of the podcast, like she said a slur.
And I feel like we got to throw a little bit of love out to the Kremlings too, because they...
Yeah, absolutely, those guys.
Casual use of the hard...
Gay!
Oh,
really?
It's jarring.
I hadn't thought about this until looking at it again. But check out the publishing date of this podcast.
This was a mere 3 months before K. Rool was set to return through Smash Ultimate. Were they trying to keep the surprise under wraps?
Hard to say, but Nintendo's been really careful about controlling the information that comes out about this game. When you're marketing a game as crucial as this one, you're going to hold your cards pretty close to your chest.
Or were they told not to talk about the Kremlings in general? This Donkey Kong history video, the My Nintendo missions, the Nintendo Museum, the Nintendo Music playlist. I mean, look at this picture. This could be coincidental, but it's really interesting that the 3 final bosses featured here in the cover art are Ganondorf, Bowser, and King Rool. This is a very different Nintendo than the one I know from a few years ago. So why haven't we seen Diddy yet? I can totally see ourselves getting a feature or an entire Donkey Kong Direct closer to the launch of the game. While the initial trailer seemed totally devoid of elements of the franchise we've come to love, we also have to understand that a lot of this dev team working on the game also grew up with Donkey Kong Country. That's why they peppered in all those references in New Donk City.
While I'm sure elements of this game will remain divisive for years to come, I don't think this is one of them. For my money, I think the Kremlings are about to make their return. Or Nintendo loves gaslighting Donkey Kong fans.